First contact and political chaos. The metallic giants appeared on a Tuesday morning, their massive ships casting shadows across every major city on Earth. Humanity's first reaction wasn't panic, it was Instagram posts. By noon, #SpaceInvaders was trending worldwide, and Senator Isabella Martinez was stuck in a Senate budget meeting, watching her colleagues argue about highway funding while civilization-changing events unfolded outside. "Mr. Chairman," she interrupted, her voice cutting through the mundane discussion, "I believe the alien armada currently blocking out the sun might be slightly more pressing than interstate maintenance." The chamber fell silent, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. The next 48 hours became a blur of emergency sessions, military briefings, and global chaos. World leaders scrambled to present a unified front, but their hasty coalition looked more like a poorly rehearsed high school play than a planetary government. Martinez watched from her office as CNN showed the same footage on repeat. Massive ships, sleek and otherworldly, hovering in perfect formation above Earth's atmosphere. Then came the message. It wasn't delivered with Hollywood fanfare or cosmic grandeur. Instead, it appeared simultaneously on every digital device on Earth, translated into all languages. "Greetings, Sol 3. The Galactic Council acknowledges your technological advancement to basic space observation. Please prepare your primary governmental representative for evaluation." The United Nations emergency session that followed would have been comical if the stakes weren't so high. Representatives argued over who should speak for Earth, each nation convinced their leader was the obvious choice. Martinez sat in the observer's gallery, watching the political theater unfold below. "We need someone who represents our military strength," argued one faction. "No, our scientific achievements," countered another. "Our cultural heritage," declared a third. The debate raged until a quiet voice from the Uruguayan delegation asked, "What about someone who actually understands people?" That's when all eyes turned to Martinez. Her reputation preceded her, the senator known for resolving impossible conflicts, for finding common ground between bitter enemies, for making deals that shouldn't work but somehow did. Her unorthodox approaches had earned her both fierce critics and loyal supporters. "Absolutely not," Martinez said when they approached her. "I'm a senator from New Mexico who can't even get an infrastructure bill passed." "Exactly," replied the Secretary General. "You're the only one here who admits what they can't do." The Galactic Council's first impression of humanity's chosen representative came when Martinez walked into their orbital chamber wearing cowboy boots under her formal suit. The assembled aliens, beings of light, crystalline structures, and forms that defied human comprehension, stirred with what might have been amusement or offense. High Commander Zixtal, a being composed of shifting geometric patterns, spoke first. "We have reviewed your species' history, your wars, your environmental damage, your reality television. Explain why we should not quarantine your world." Martinez looked around the chamber, taking in the advanced beings who held Earth's fate in their various appendages. Then she did something that would later be described as either the bravest or most foolish act in human history. She laughed. "Commander," she said, still smiling, "if you've really reviewed our history, then you know that humanity's greatest achievement isn't our technology or our wars. It's the fact that despite everything, despite our differences, our fears, our capacity for destruction, we keep trying to be better. We fall down, we get up, we help each other up. We're messy and complicated and probably a galactic headache waiting to happen. But we're also the species that created jazz, that writes poems about sunsets, that sends rovers to Mars with birthday songs programmed into them." She paused, noting the subtle shifts in the alien delegates' postures. "You're not looking at a perfect species. You're looking at a species that's perfectly aware of its imperfections and keeps going anyway. And if that's not worth something in this vast universe of yours, then maybe your council could use a fresh perspective." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien languages. Some delegates appeared outraged, others intrigued. Commander Zixtal's pattern swirled faster, a sign that would later be understood as intense interest. Martinez had no way of knowing it then, but her words had just triggered a chain of events that would reshape galactic society. The humans weren't just joining the galactic community. They were about to turn it upside down. And it all started because a senator from New Mexico decided to be honest about humanity's biggest flaw: their stubborn, persistent, impossible hope. The diplomatic dance. The Galactic Council's headquarters resembled a cross between a corporate office and a quantum physics experiment gone wild. Senator Martinez spent her first week trying not to look impressed by corridors that occasionally defied gravity and meeting rooms that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. She failed miserably at hiding her amazement, but this turned out to be an unexpected advantage. Your species' capacity for wonder is unusual, noted Ambassador Ixleth, a crystalline being who served as the Council's chief of protocol. The way they said unusual made it sound like both a compliment and a concern. Martinez was setting up her new office, insisting on keeping her old desk from Earth, despite the Council's offer of a hyperspace-enabled workstation. Where I come from, Ambassador, being unusual is often just another word for being interesting. Her human staff, a small team of diplomats and analysts, had already started cataloging their faux pas. Apparently, offering coffee to the gaseous representatives from Nebula 6 was considered highly offensive. The fact that the gas clouds had accepted the coffee anyway, leading to a fascinating discussion about human hospitality customs, was telling. The real breakthrough came during the first major trade negotiation. The Proxima Centauri Consortium, represented by beings of pure energy, presented Earth with a standard development package: limited access to basic faster-than-light technology in exchange for 90% of Earth's water resources. Martinez's response became instant galactic legend. Distinguished representatives, she began, setting aside the formal proposal. Let me tell you about my grandmother's chila recipe. The energy beings flickered in confusion as Martinez launched into a story about family traditions, secret ingredients, and the importance of sharing meals. You see, she concluded, on Earth, we don't just exchange resources. We exchange stories, traditions, experiences. Your offer is like asking for all our water in exchange for a replicator, when what we really want is to learn how to cook together. The Proximan representatives were silent for exactly 3.7 seconds, the longest they had ever been recorded without pulsing. Then they did something unprecedented. They asked for the recipe. By the end of the month, Earth had secured a much more favorable trade deal, and Proximan fusion restaurants were serving their own version of New Mexican cuisine. The fact that their food consisted entirely of plasma and could potentially vaporize human customers was beside the point. Cultural exchange had begun. Not everyone was pleased with Earth's rising influence. The Arcturus Dominion, one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations, viewed humanity's rapid integration into galactic society with growing alarm. Their high executor, a being known only as the Voice, called for an emergency council session. These humans, the Voice resonated through the chamber, are disrupting millennia of established protocols. They approach sacred traditions with irreverence, treat serious matters with humor, and worst of all, they're making it work. Martinez stood to respond, but was interrupted by a notification on her tablet. She couldn't help but smile. Earth's first galactic social media platform had just launched, and a meme comparing the Voice to a grumpy cat had already gone viral among council species. Honorable Voice, she said, fighting to keep her expression serious. You're absolutely right. We are disruptive. We ask questions that haven't been asked in millennia. We look at ancient problems with fresh eyes. And yes, sometimes we make jokes about things you hold sacred. But consider this. In the 3 months since Earth joined the galactic community, trade between member species has increased by 23%. Cultural exchange programs have quadrupled. Even the Hivemind Collective of Betelgeuse has started a galaxy-wide cooking show. She pulled up a holographic display showing various statistics. We're not just disrupting for disruption's sake. We're reminding the galaxy that different doesn't mean wrong, that new doesn't mean dangerous, and that sometimes the best way to solve an ancient problem is to look at it like you've never seen it before. The chamber erupted in discussion. The younger species, particularly, seemed energized by Martinez's words. Even some of the ancient civilizations showed signs of interest, their representatives leaning forward, or whatever passed for leaning in their respective physiologies, to better observe the human phenomenon. The voice, however, was not convinced. You play a dangerous game, Senator Martinez. There are forces in this galaxy older than your entire civilization, powers you don't understand. Martinez smiled, thinking of countless human history lessons. With all due respect, voice, dealing with powers we don't understand is practically humanity's specialty. We call it innovation. As she left the chamber that day, Martinez received a message from Earth. The first human-alien cultural festival was being planned, and somehow her grandmother's chila recipe had become the centerpiece. Somewhere in the vast expanse of space, humanity's reputation was changing from primitive newcomers to the species you need to watch. And they were just getting started. Crisis point. The crisis began with a cup of coffee, specifically, the first successful replication of Earth coffee by Centaurian quantum fabricators. Within days, half the species in the galaxy were addicted to caffeine. 3 solar systems had declared coffee beans a controlled substance, and the Arcturus Dominion was demanding Earth's immediate quarantine for introducing psychoactive substances into galactic society. Senator Martinez stood at her office window, watching the swirling quantum storms that always surrounded the Galactic Council headquarters. Her coffee, the real Earth kind, had gone cold hours ago. "They're calling for an emergency session," her aide, Raj Patel, reported. "All 57 members of the High Council, even the dormant ones, are awakening to attend." He paused. "That hasn't happened since the Great Spiral War." Martinez nodded, her reflection grim in the quantum glass. In 6 months, humanity had managed to completely upend the galactic status quo. Earth music was causing religious experiences among the crystalline species. Human literature had inspired 3 peaceful revolutions in the Orion Arm. And last week, a group of teenagers had taught the ancient hive mind of Betelgeuse how to use TikTok. "The voice is leading the opposition," Raj continued. "They're saying we're too dangerous to be allowed unrestricted access to galactic society. That we're chaos agents." "Funny," Martinez murmured. "That's exactly what they used to say about me in the Senate." She turned from the window, her expression shifting from concern to determination. "Get me everything we have on the Arcturus Dominion's trade relationships, and find out which species have been most impacted by cultural exchange with Earth." The emergency session was scheduled for the next cycle. As Martinez entered the vast chamber, she noticed immediately that the seating had been arranged differently. The older, more powerful species clustered together, while Earth and its few allies were isolated on the periphery. Classic power play, she thought. Some things were universal. The voice spoke first, its resonance filling the chamber. "Esteemed Council, we face an unprecedented crisis. The human influence spreads through our society like a virus, disrupting trade agreements that have stood for millennia, questioning traditions that maintain our stability, introducing concepts that," the voice actually shuddered, "encourage innovation." Martinez watched as species after species rose to speak, many echoing the voice's concerns. But she also noticed something else. The younger civilizations, the ones usually silent in these sessions, were showing signs of restlessness. When her turn came, Martinez didn't stand immediately. Instead, she activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. "Before I address the Council's concerns, I'd like to share some numbers." The display showed a complex web of trade routes and cultural exchanges. In the past 6 months, interspecies trade has increased by 300%. Cultural exchange programs have led to technological breakthroughs in 17 different fields. The Crystalline Confederation reports their artisans are experiencing their first new forms of expression in 10,000 years. She stood now, her voice carrying across the chamber. But the most interesting number is this. Happiness indices across all participating species have risen by an average of 47%. A murmur ran through the chamber. Happiness wasn't supposed to be a measurable metric in galactic politics. The Arcturus Dominion claims we're agents of chaos. Martinez continued. They're right. We are. Chaos isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's the force that breaks up stagnation. Sometimes it's the thing that makes people question why they've been doing the same thing the same way for 1,000 years. She turned to face the voice directly. You say we're dangerous because we encourage innovation. But ask yourself this. Who profits from a galaxy that never changes? Who benefits when civilizations are too afraid to try new things? The chamber erupted in discussion. Martinez had just publicly challenged one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, a move that would either prove brilliant or catastrophically stupid. The voice's form darkened ominously. You dare suggest? I dare suggest that perhaps the real threat isn't Earth's influence, Martinez interrupted, but the fear of what happens when people realize they have choices, when they discover that because it's always been done this way isn't actually a reason. Suddenly, a representative from one of the younger species, a civilization that had gained spaceflight only a few centuries ago, stood. We support Earth's position. One by one, other young civilizations rose to join them. The voice's next words came as a barely controlled hiss. You have no idea what forces you're playing with, Senator. There are powers in this galaxy that could snuff out your entire species with a thought. Martinez smiled, and those who knew her well recognized it as her victory smile. That's funny, she said, because there are ideas in human history that have overcome exactly those kinds of powers. We call them democracy, freedom of expression, and the right to choose your own path. As the chamber descended into chaos, Martinez sat back down, catching Raj's eye. He gave her a subtle nod. Their allies were already mobilizing, ready to support Earth's position. The battle lines had been drawn, not between species or technological capabilities, but between the forces of stagnation and change. And humanity, for better or worse, had just become the galaxy's symbol of revolution. The next few days would determine whether that revolution would reshape the galaxy or end in Earth's isolation from galactic society forever. A new galactic order. One standard galactic year after what became known as the Great Revelation, Senator Martinez stood before a very different galactic council. The chamber, once rigidly hierarchical, now formed a perfect circle. Representatives from thousands of civilizations sat not by age or power, but alphabetically, a surprisingly controversial human concept that had somehow stuck. The voice was notably absent. The Arcturus Dominion, along with several other ancient powers, had retreated to their territories to contemplate the changing nature of galactic society. Everyone knew it was really a diplomatic way of saying they were sulking. Distinguished representatives, Martinez began, her voice carrying across the chamber that now incorporated acoustic designs from a dozen different species. 1 year ago, we stood at a crossroads. Today, we stand at a beginning. The holographic displays showed the statistics that even the most conservative species couldn't deny. Innovation rates had skyrocketed across all sectors. Cultural exchange had led to technological breakthroughs that solved problems that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. The Crystalline Confederation had collaborated with human artists to create entirely new forms of art that existed in 11 dimensions. The Hivemind Collective had started a galaxy-wide social network that somehow combined telepathy with memes. But our greatest achievement, Martinez continued, gesturing to the newly installed quantum screens, isn't in these numbers. It's in the conversations happening right now across millions of worlds. Species that never spoke to each other are sharing ideas. Civilizations that were stuck in millennia-old patterns are rediscovering their creativity. A representative from the Proxima Centauri Consortium, now sporting a distinctly Earth-inspired diplomatic uniform, stood to speak. Earth's influence has been transformative. Last week, our youth organized the first Galactic Music Festival. Several stars went nova from the sheer energy of the bass drops. They paused. It was awesome. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Another human concept that had proven surprisingly infectious across species boundaries. Martinez smiled, remembering how formal and sterile these sessions used to be. But transformation isn't always easy. Change brings challenges. That's why today, I'm proposing the establishment of the Galactic Cultural Exchange Program. The holographic display shifted to show a complex network of connections between worlds. Every participating civilization will have the opportunity to both teach and learn. Earth will share our experiences with democracy, creativity, and innovation. In return, we'll learn from the wisdom and knowledge of species far older than our own. And what of those who resist? Asked a representative from one of the newer spacefaring races. Everyone knew they were really asking about the Arcturus Dominion and their allies. We leave the door open, Martins replied simply. Earth's history has taught us that the best way to overcome resistance to change is not through force, but through example. When they see what's possible in a galaxy where every voice matters, where every species can contribute to the greater whole, they'll make their own choice. She paused, looking around the chamber at the diverse array of beings who had become not just allies, but friends. Humanity didn't come to the galaxy to lead it. We came to join it. But in joining it, we remembered something that perhaps the galaxy had forgotten, that the greatest adventures don't come from following established paths, but from daring to forge new ones. The chamber erupted in what humans would recognize as applause, though it took many different forms across species. The gaseous beings pulsed with chromatic harmonies. The crystal collective chimed in resonant frequencies. The energy entities created miniature auroras. As the session concluded, Martinez received a priority message from Earth. The first graduating class of the Interspecies Diplomatic Academy was ready to begin their assignments. Young humans would be stationed across the galaxy, while representatives from hundreds of alien species would come to Earth. The exchange of ideas, cultures, and dreams would continue. In her office later, looking out at the quantum storms that now seemed less threatening and more beautiful, Martinez reflected on the journey. Earth hadn't just earned respect in the galaxy. They had helped the galaxy remember how to respect itself. Raj entered with his daily report. Senator, you might want to see this. The Arcturus Dominion has sent a message. Martins raised an eyebrow. Oh, they're requesting cultural exchange representatives. Raj couldn't hide his smile. Apparently, their youth are very interested in something called rock and roll. Martinez laughed, a sound that would have once been considered inappropriate in the halls of galactic power, but now felt perfectly at home. Well, she said, as we say on Earth, better late than never. Outside her window, the quantum storms swirled in patterns that seemed to mirror the new galaxy, unpredictable, beautiful, and full of possibilities. Somewhere in the vast expanse of space, a young Arcturian was probably listening to Earth music for the first time. A human teenager was learning telepathic poetry from the Hive Mind Collective. A crystal being was experimenting with jazz.